What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today when I talk to you about SoundHound, I want to go over some of the current data points, break it down on what just came out from SoundHound and what shorts are doing today. Before I get into any of that, make sure you guys hit that thumbs up, and with that, let's get right to it. So SoundHound is up 1.08%, 928 the low, 966 the high. So during the pre-market, you did have a lot of good momentum, and it was not just with SoundHound, it's pretty much across the board because of Meta and Microsoft and a couple other big names unveiling their earnings, all kicking ass. So that's what gave the market a nice push higher, but we did have some negative data, so that's causing the level of uncertainty today. But I think that's going to happen most likely tomorrow, because every single day we've had some negative data point in one way or another, and it all prompts a lot of fear. And so I think the market's just jittery right now, and so anticipate a pullback tomorrow as well. Non-farm payroll and also unemployment are both coming out at 7:30. But aside from that, market seems to be recovering every time. So again, maybe it might be a good indication to potentially buy the dip again. But nonetheless, though, there was one thing that did come out associated to SoundHound, and as well, a couple things that might be coming out sooner rather than later. So starting off, they did do this. So it was a post on Twitter. They didn't do any official news as far as I have been able to see yet, but we're excited to be collaborating with Power Connect AI to power leading voice AI experience for the utility sector. So this is something that they did bring up in their, I believe it was Q4 earnings, or it might have been their Q3 earnings, but nonetheless, they didn't really drop any names or anything like that. But clearly, this is where they want to go. And I think this is, at the same time, the biggest criticism I've had with SoundHound is that they seem to be very much niche. So they're sticking to the automotive, and they're not really pursuing it as much as, for instance, restaurant. So I think at the end of the day, SoundHound needs to realize that they have pretty much unlimited, untapped potential. They can do anything. And for instance, their recent partnership with Tencent, that is going to open up a lot of doors. And so for those of you that don't know, Tencent is a massive company, and they do already have good partnerships with Toyota, NIO, many others. So this was just announced recently, so it looks as though that Toyota and Waymo might have some sort of collaboration in the foreseeable future. So if SoundHound is going to be kind of put in a lot of Toyota vehicles, that in among itself is going to be huge. But if, let's say, Toyota does take their technology and rolls it and merges it with Waymo, SoundHound through that could get dragged in. So I'm not here to kind of speculate much more than that, but still it goes to show the untapped potential that SoundHound has. And they've had a lot of good partnerships, such as most recently Tencent, that's going to open up a lot of doors. But there was one thing that kind of gave me an idea that there might be some partnerships more coming down the pipeline, because based on what obviously SoundHound just kind of mentioned, they want to target the utility sector as for whatever reason. But they obviously, the moral of the story is that they can communicate with consumers on behalf of obviously companies. And so, like I said, I think this has been my biggest criticism against them over the last couple of earnings, is that they are very, I feel like, narrow-minded. They're just thinking solely about the utility sector. That's something they've brought up, even automotive, retail. Whereas this, so for those of you that are invested in SoFi, this might kind of be familiar to you, but it does show through this individual, so SoFi Insider, who's able to catch on to kind of what SoFi is able to or planning on doing. So it looks as though that SoFi is going to have some sort of conversational AI powered chat interface. So once again, SoFi has the ability to potentially reach out and do this for not just utility companies, but for SoFi and for a lot of other big names out there. So even a lot of the brick and mortar banks recently have stated in their last earnings, to cut costs, they're actually going to be moving to more digital. And so again, this is something that SoFi could really hit a home run with and really expand. So as much as I know a lot of people might not like expansion because that does cost money, but nonetheless, I think it is going to be in their best interest to potentially target companies such as SoFi. So it's a little bit more of a constructive criticism, like I said, that I feel like SoundHound really needs to develop themselves a lot more, and then that way they can get more of these type of deals. Aside from that though, looking at shorts, they are increasing 533,000 shares today. 32.72% of the free floats being shorted, works out to be 119.06 million shares. Moving over to options, 1.08 million in calls, 558,000 in puts. So kind of low on the overall dollar value front, but 48% of all the options being done today are bearish in nature. So you do have big money really just not believing that SoundHound is and should be at these levels. And you can kind of see this big outlier right here. So it looks like when it started to recover throughout the day, this is where a lot of the bearish options were done. But based on the bulls, you do see a consensus for it to be roughly around that $10 range, at least for this week. And then going into next week, it seems to be the same. So roughly around that 10 to 10.50. Bears are anticipating for it to be sub $9. But moving on from here though, these are all the transactions that did occur on the secondary market above $100,000. So this is that massive string of selling that caused that sell-off first thing. Of course, a lot of that, like I said, was brought on because of the data points. So 1.96 million, that was a large one right there. Since then, you have 4 buys. So big money's somewhat buying the SoundHound dip: 120, 100,000, 720, and then 147,000. These are all the transactions occurring on the dark pool above $100,000, most of which probably is linked to shorting in one way or another. They love to use the dark pool and stuff like that, but with it right now at $9.36, trading between these 2 points, so this R1 and the pivot. So 859 is going to be a strong support, and then 991 is going to be the next strong target / resistance. No new analyst ratings. So last one was, I believe it was 17 days ago. So $10 buy, D.A. Davidson, Gill, who has a 41% success rating. And then with their earnings coming up, I believe it is next week. I think it's on May the 8th. You don't see any changes to the earnings per share or revenue, but I'll continue to monitor this just to see if there is any changes, because analysts can change the estimates without changing the actual rating. That's something that I feel like a lot of people don't really understand, but I'll still continue to monitor this. And on a side note, I can definitely live stream the earnings if you are interested. So if you do want me to do that, let me know in the comments below. And as well, if you just want a lot of this information, click on the link in the description below for it to be all completely free, such as analyst ratings, technicals, like all normally you actually have to pay for if you go through tip ranks. IBKR has it all for free. So just join, link in the description below and also the comments. It's completely free to do so. But a couple of things to point out though, right now $9.08 is that 50-day moving average. So right now it is still currently above that. Also at 9.06 you have that 200-day moving average, very strong support. So above this point right here, so that 859, that's going to be based on the fib levels. So based on the actual chart, you have that 200 and also that 50-day moving average. So pretty good, at least unless all Armageddon again kind of kicks off and we have massive amount of fear, that level of support should hold. But right now it is below the ALMA, so that is sitting at $9.47. So yeah, I think right now the market needs to get over all this jitter and this last minute fears from the data points, and hopefully SoundHound does have kick-ass earnings and can really move higher from here. Just their upcoming earnings, they really need to hit home that they are not just like so niche. They are pretty much opening the door because they are in the market for increasing efficiency. Like, even though tariffs might affect consumers, their business, assuming their sales is on point and their sales team is on point, there should be no disruption. They can really still expand at a probably faster rate during times of fear rather than expansion, because during times of fear, that is where companies typically are trying to cut costs. And SoundHound, again, if their sales team pitches it correctly, they can get a lot of good deals, if that kind of makes sense, and partnerships. So let me know your thoughts on SoundHound. Have you been buying? Have you been selling? What's your general thoughts on SoundHound? So give yourself a shout out. One final thing, pop over to my Patreon. I give buy signals on stocks, options, crypto, many of which have been absolutely on point. So definitely worthwhile to pop over there and take a look. With all that said though, appreciate all of you watching.